She is the immediate past chair of the Community College Association of Texas Trustees, and she is currently a doctoral candidate in the Community College Leadership Program at the University of Texas at Austin. Molly Beth is presently completing her internship also at Austin Community College under the supervision of Dr. Richard Rhodes, the president there. She, as an elected member of the Texarkana College Board of Trustees, she held that position from 2006 to 2012, and she was the board secretary for 3 years, and she chaired the building committee. She was also on the Texarkana College Foundation Board. She's been particularly instrumental in founding the Community College Association of Texas Trustees, and she is, as I already said, the immediate past chair of that organization. She's served on numerous committees for the Association of Community College Trustees, and she's also served on numerous nonprofit boards at the state and local levels. She's a licensed professional counselor, and she has earned a BAS in elementary education from Southern Methodist University and an MS in counseling and guidance from Texas A&M University, Texarkana. With that, I'm going to turn over this panel to Molly Beth Malcolm.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's good to be here this afternoon. I know everybody is so excited to hear about campus financial management on Friday afternoon at this time. So Dr. Leslie asked me to remind y'all that you would be tested at the end of this, and if you don't pass, we're going to make you stay longer. So listen closely. No, we'll try to maybe make it a little fun. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to be the moderator for this illustrious panel. And to my left is Betty McCrowan, and she is the president of Wharton County Junior College. And prior to becoming the president there, she was the executive vice president of administrative services. Prior to that, she served at Houston Community College, and she has overseen the opening of 3 new campuses while she has been at Wharton Community College. And there's a lot of other wonderful information in your notes on each of these panelists, so I'm not going to go through all of it, but she holds a master's degree with a major in higher ed administration from the University of Houston and a Bachelor of Science with a major in education from Angelo State University. To my immediate left is Dr. Bruce Leslie. He's the chancellor of Alamo Colleges in San Antonio, and he oversees 5 colleges, a $480 million budget, and a student enrollment of over 67,000 credit and 30,000 continuing education students each year. Bruce has served on numerous boards and committees, and wherever he's been, he has received the American Association of Community Colleges Regional President's Award, and I'm proud to say that next week in Boston, he will be receiving the ACCT Western Region CEO Award. So he's won the same award from both of the organizations, the President's Organization and the trustees, and so we're looking forward to that. Bruce has a bachelor's degree from Baldwin Wallace College in Ohio, a master's degree from Sam Houston State, and he earned his PhD in higher ed in the same program I'm in, the Community College Leadership Program at the University of Texas. And then to my right is Dr. Miles Shelton, who's the president of Galveston College. Prior to that, he was the president of Clarendon College, and prior to that, held a number of positions at Hill College. He is very active in his professional organizations and also is a member of the Economic Development Corporations, Chambers of Commerce, and the Boy Scouts of America and the Lions Club. And he is a Baylorite through and through, an undergraduate degree, a master's degree, and a doctorate in educational administration from Baylor University. I have had the pleasure of working with all 3 of these presidents and getting to know them well through their work with the Community College Association of Texas Trustees. They are all 3 presidents who work closely with their trustees and are committed to helping all of us understand our roles and the partnership that's so important between the president and the trustees if you want your college to run as it should. So please join me in welcoming this illustrious group of panelists to talk to you about a tough topic on Friday afternoon. Okay, with that, we will see what we can go through here. All of us know, because this is what we've been talking about all the last 2 days, that we have legal and ethical and moral responsibilities as you fulfill the role of a community college trustee. And in Texas, I think sometimes we don't stop and think about how much revenue comes from the state and the federal and the local governments, in addition to tuition and fees. And it totals, if you put all of our 50 community college budgets together, it's over $5.4 billion with the revenue coming from all of those different places. And this training on campus financial management, like all the other ones that you've just been through, was something that was enacted during the last legislative session because the legislature determined that if we were all going to be entrusted with oversight of that much money, that might mean there was a better need for a better understanding of the role of the trustee in campus financial management. And as you know, our work as board members is to work hand in hand with our presidents to set policy. And then it's the job of the president and the president's administrative team to implement those policies. Ours is not the implementation, it's the oversight and the setting of policy. And certainly it's crucial that the president is transparent with their board and shares what's going on and helps them to understand the role that they have. So that's where we want to begin this conversation this afternoon, is by asking a broad question of these presidents that will help kind of set the stage for the whole conversation about best practices in campus financial management. And it doesn't matter who answers first, and everybody can answer or part of it. But well, if you hadn't said anything, I would have looked back over there. But Miles, I guess you can start since you said that. And so here's the first question is, how do you help your board members understand their role, and how do you also help them understand when they might be stepping over the line into day-to-day operations?
Great question. I've been fortunate in my career as president to have and work with some very good boards, very stable boards, boards with long-term members who have been extremely helpful as new members come on to the board. So what we've done is, as new members come on to our board, we have an orientation. Usually the board chair and I sit down with the new board member, and we go through, we start with, you know, the basic function and mission of the college, the purposes of the community college, and proceed from that down to the board role. But the board chair and I do that together, and then normally that board member will have a mentor, another board member who helps them along the way as we go through that first year, because there's a certain amount of institutional knowledge. I mean, you can read all the legalese and the policies and things that board members are supposed to know, but you have to gain institutional knowledge along the way. And so there's a guiding shepherd there, a mentor who helps them do that. And then also anytime they have questions, we want to be sure that we're transparent and provide all the information that's requested. In regards to the second part of the question, obviously that's a critical issue. What is the board's role? What is the president's and the administration's role? And that's also an accreditation issue. So you can't overlook that, because it's something that you very carefully have to distinguish. And I found that the board, if you go through the education process with the board and they understand their role, that it's much easier to begin to answer that question. Every now and then somebody wants to step across the line, but then that's when the other board members have to come in and say, no, wait a minute, that's not right. So it's very important that the board chair be a leader and make sure everybody makes that distinction.
Okay, great. What do y'all?
Well, I could echo everything that Miles said. Some of the things that we do a little differently is that I do board training an hour before our regular board meeting, particularly when we have new members. But I find that helps, and the board chair finds that helps refresh the whole board. They then engage in questions about that, and that helps the new board members as well. Of course, we send board members to training such as this. We also bring our attorneys in to do specific training in legal issues, making them aware of all of those responsibilities and liabilities that you face each day, and that as we advise them, particularly on policy and personnel matters that are already set, how important that is for them to understand understand the ethics issues that you've been hearing about today as well. We also have mentors on the board. I've been very fortunate over the last 13 years I've been president at Wharton County Junior College. I've had almost the same board until recently. So I'm going through a new experience in a way. But it's wonderful in that you bring in new thoughts to the board and new vision to the board. So I invite it. It takes trust building. It doesn't happen in a minute. And there are days when you're paranoid because, you know, you've been there and you want to be there, and these are your bosses just as you are. So your board chair is critical. The board chair is the one that the president typically works with in most institutions. So it's very critical that you have a good relationship. And that board chair then can help the board understand if they're going over the line in a way that you can't do as a president, but always being transparent and making sure that they have that confidence in you as well. So those are the things I would add.
Thanks.
There are three principles that I've tried to develop. One is the principle of policy. The second is of trust. And the third is of communications and information. So whether it's a new board member or the need to reaffirm with the board itself or other members of the board, by setting those three early has been really helpful to me. So on the policy side, ensuring that the board has adopted policy that really does in fact clarify what the role of the board and the role of the CEO is. And there's plenty of material out there to utilize for that, including state policy. So making sure that that's in place allows me then to draw trustee attention to that if I need to do that. The second one is trust. Making sure that the new trustee early on gets to know me and my team is really important, particularly if that new trustee has an agenda. And sometimes, as you know, a new trustee comes in with an agenda. They either represent a constituency or they have a certain perception about things. So it's really important to try to help that individual understand the full picture and not necessarily carry that agenda with him or her. So building that sense of trust, knowing who I am. So there's a regular series of meetings that I hold, some with me and the chair, some with just me, some with me and my executive team, to try to help start to build that relationship. And then the last part is communications and information. And the communications part gets further by those interactions. The more you get to know somebody, get to know them more intimately, then the better your communications are going to be. And then the communication, the information side, as my colleagues have said, are about helping them to see the big picture of what the role of a trustee is vis-a-vis the role of the staff and administration, understanding the policies. We have a pretty good book that we've put together over the last several years that includes a lot of material from ACCT and AGB that we can then refer the trustee to. We do send new trustees to the ACCT workshops. We do, from time to time, bring ACCT in, bring a consultant in for one of our retreats to meet with the board. We now do a board evaluation process every 2 years. We agreed it wasn't necessary to do it annually, so every 2 years it's now in policy that we will do self-evaluation of the board. So those are all opportunities to continue to reinforce the culture that we're trying to build. I do depend on the board chair, as most of us do, as was said. If there is an issue that's arising with a certain trustee, that's where I start. Sometimes it's just simpler for that chair to have the conversation. Sometimes it requires me to have that conversation. But what I've learned over the years is if you let it go, it's just going to come back to haunt you. So trying to get to that issue right from the get-go is very important. Although I have to admit, sometimes you just can't go there. It just won't happen, no matter how much you or your board chair tries. And from time to time, I'll work with other members of the board so that there's a collective sense of we need to nip this one in the bud. That may mean bringing the attorney in. That may mean bringing some other strategies to bear. But those are usually the way that I have dealt with those kinds of issues.
Thank you. So I think I hear from all three of you, it's about communication and education with your board to be able to move forward with the kind of working relationship that you want. I know that there's trustees in the room that are new, and I also know there's some that have been around, but I often find that when you are new, you know, all of these acronyms get thrown out and you may be sitting there going, what are they talking about? ACCT is the Association of Community College Trustees, and that's the National Organization for Trustees. AGB is Association of Governing Boards. That's what I was saying. And it's another one, and it encompasses both governing boards for community colleges and universities
and private colleges.
And then you've heard us talk about, you heard Bill Holder talking about CAT and TAC. CAT is the Community College Association of Texas Trustees. TAC, and that's the trustee state organization. TAC is Texas Association of Community Colleges, and that is the president's organization. And with this partnership that is being formed with those two organizations, that's going to be another real emphasis, is to help provide more training for boards throughout the state of Texas, because we want to be the very best that we can possibly be in the state of Texas. So I hope that's helpful if you're new in all of this. The next question that I have on here is, what are some of the long-term financial issues that are facing both the presidents and the boards as we look to the future? And I know some of that's been discussed, but can we go into that a little more? So.
Yeah, maybe I can go ahead and start. You all know generally the state issues and to a large extent the potential federal issues that are hanging over our heads as well. But inside the organization, I think there are several key areas that we have got to get our arms around. One of them is preventive maintenance. We don't typically do a particularly good job of ensuring that we have the funding system in place to ensure that we are staying on top of the natural deterioration that takes place in our facilities. And then that can come up and grab us very seriously. If an elevator doesn't work and we don't have the money to replace it because it's 30 years old, or if a roof prematurely deteriorates and you've got to deal with the damage caused by that, and all those kinds of things. So that's one area. The second area is the size of our staff, our employees. In higher education, we tend to be very liberal about how we staff our operations. And frankly, this is more true in the larger institutions. We tend to hire people to work around low-performing people. And so over time, you grow your organization beyond, frankly, what needs to be there. And then everybody starts to protect them. And then if you start to cut back, everybody starts to, you know, cry and yell. But the reality is that our percentage of our employees as a percentage of our budget is too high generally. And so that's the second area that I think is really critical that we need to get our arms around. The third area is there is not going to be new money. So we have to be very deliberate about reducing our cost structures. So developing systems to assess our handling of the things that we do, streamlining our operations in all areas, and literally creating a culture of efficiency is going to be enormously incumbent upon us going forward. If we're going to have the money to invest in new technologies, if we're going to have the money that we may need to do to create new programs in response to the local needs, frankly, we're going to have to find that money internally. And the only way to do that is by creating a much more effective and efficient system. So those are the three areas that I would suggest you all need to be paying close attention to.
I would agree with the deferred maintenance that's growing on all of our campuses, those of us particularly with older campuses. Functionality of those facilities is a critical issue. In an age where technology is expected from our students, expect that when they come to us, our faculty expect that. It's becoming more and more difficult to provide that, not only in that sense, but also in the classroom and also with new programs that we're trying to develop to deal with emerging technology and keeping a skilled workforce. So those are very big issues for us internally. I think accountability, as Dr. Leslie just alluded to, in a lot of our campuses, we have an old campus culture that was created in 1946, and we've got some people that have been there since 1946. So, and they're beloved, and it is an issue to deal with, and the production of some people compared to others. So in academia particularly, that is an issue I think that we have to deal with for the future.
Oh my, where do I start? I agree with my colleagues. The facilities maintenance is a critical issue. If you're not budgeting for that, you're not either through a regular system of annual maintenance or through long-term capital planning, you need to be doing that. Technology is another critical issue. Many of our campuses were wired for the internet back in the 90s, and the current bandwidth is just not there that we need into today's classrooms. So if you're not planning to update your infrastructure, technology infrastructure, that's something you need to be thinking about. You know, how much of your budget can you spend on technology? Is that 2%? Is that 7%? Is that 10%? And it varies in complexity by the size of the institution. But you know, a small institution like mine, we spend 7% of our budget on technology. That's a big number for us. But we're committed to that because of the e-learning and the e-textbooks and the things that we want to do and have available to our students. Staffing, Dr. Leslie mentioned staffing. It's a big part of our budget. But unlike a large institution where you can find some workarounds, it's a lot harder to do in a small institution where you do have to be efficient and that everybody has to carry their weight. We just can't have those that just fill up space. So it's a lot harder to do for a small institution. We're very dependent upon good people to do a lot of things and wear a lot of different hats. But I'd like to go back to the bigger picture, and that is when we talk about, and both Ben and Johnette made reference to falling state revenues and expectations going forward that state revenues could be even less than what they are today. That's significant for small institutions or colleges that have small tax bases. And they're going to be much more dependent upon those tax bases. They're going to be much more dependent upon local tuition and fees. And they're going to be looking to find efficiencies within the institution because it comes down to if one leg of that three-legged stool is being gradually sawed off, how is that still going to stay erect? How is that still going to stand up without state support? And so I think that's the big picture going forward. You saw the diagrams on the previous slides in the previous presentations, but you know, if you think about it, the governor called for a 10% cut in our state appropriations last spring coming into 2013. It could be worse than that. Think about that as you start thinking about next year's budget. What if you lost 25% of your state appropriations between now and the fall of 13? How would you handle that? Can you find the cuts? Are you going to have to raise tuition? Are you going to be more efficient? Are you going to go back to the local taxpayers? It's a difficult choice, particularly for some of our institutions which are already at their tax cap. So.
Thanks to all three of y'all for being real frank about this. And I think, you know, changing culture is hard. People get used to this is the way we've always done it and don't like to make those changes. And then when the state does do all of these budget cuts, it makes it harder. And that's where it falls on us as trustees to back our presidents in tough decisions that they have to make. And, you know, we're there to make, if we believe in our president, then we need to be backing them when they're making those tough decisions. And it's real easy as trustees to start getting calls from neighbors and friends and somebody that's going to be impacted, and that's when it's easy for trustees to step over the line into the day-to-day business of who's making those decisions in our presidents. And some of you have heard me say this, and I'm sure it scares everybody to death when I say it, but our board president said this at a retreat that we had, and he made the comment, when you hire, and he got it from somewhere else, but he made the comment is, first thing that you ought to ask at every board meeting is, do we need to fire our president today? And if your answer is no, we love our president, we want our president to be there, then the next thing that you should be doing is everything you can to absolutely back every decision they made. And they should not be being second guessed on the decisions they make. We hire presidents because we believe they have the leadership abilities to do what is right for the college, and they've got a lot more information than we do as trustees because they're working with a whole lot of people. And you know, all three of them have talked about keeping their trustees informed and giving them the information they have. So I think that's extremely important to be sure we back them on, and there are tougher decisions coming down the pike, I do believe as well. The next question is, how do you accomplish your annual budget planning with your board, and give some examples of the kinds of information you share with your board? Betty, you want to start with that?
Well, you've seen one that was very similar to ours if you looked at Ben's presentation. We began our budgeting process in March, and that bubbles up from the bottom all the way to the top. It is also taken into account the strategic plans of the institution, how each of those budget requests addresses that. The board is very involved in the strategic plan, obviously that includes a master plan for facilities. And it comes to the executive level after all of those different areas have input into their budget process, and we review those, and then we take it to our Board of Trustees in a series of workshops where the board then interjects their goals, their concerns, their directives. An example of that would be salaries. What are we doing with salaries? What funds are available to deal with salaries? Where are we when compared to our colleagues in the area? Where do we want to be? So those are the kinds of questions that the board looks at. They don't get into the everyday operation budget of the college. They look at the big picture items, tuition and fees, where do we want to be in regard to that? How does an increase in that limit access for any group when we're trying to diversify enrollment? And there are many other issues that they deal with, but it's at a broad, high level that the board looks at. And we culminate that in a final workshop, and involves the public, involves all of our staff if they wish to come. We don't have a process, as was stated earlier, where we have different groups within the college that come and present to the board. Those individuals are certainly allowed to present to the administration, the executive staff, and then we take any of those concerns forward. But that's primarily how our college works, and that's probably not unlike many of my colleagues.
We've built a system, a structure that operates year-round. So the first level is ongoing information to the board about trends and issues that come up. If we receive, I'm sure all my colleagues do this, a note from the governor's office, then immediately that is communicated to the board. But there's also articles and literature that come across our desks, and I regularly forward those to the trustees, maybe with some notations on why I'm sending this, what to pay attention to, so that I can help them continue to understand the big picture. What's happening in the industry, where are the trends and the changes that we need to be dealing with. Secondarily, each year as part of my evaluation process, that concludes with a series of charges from the board. So I have formal document from the board saying these are the things we want you to address in the upcoming year. Some of them may continue over several years, others are brought newly to me. And those I try to incorporate less formally necessarily in the strategic planning process, but depending on the nature of the charge, it may end up there at some point. And then every February we have a system-wide strategic planning retreat where we invite faculty, leadership, staff leadership, administrators, community leaders, and students. And we utilize our existing strategic plan and we build from that, we renew it, we consider additions and modifications to it. Now, that plan is for the next budget year. Okay, so there's an overlap. Because at that point, February, we're already knee-deep into developing the budget for that next year, okay? So that February meeting then gives us time over the summer and into the fall for the administration to look at that and decide where we need to prioritize. And then in November, we have a retreat with the board where we kick off the budget development process for the following year. Okay? So at that November retreat, it's a combination strategic thinking and budget development process. So my team brings to them where we think the priorities are going to be for that next budget cycle. We then determine from our conversation what elements the board wants to either emphasize or add to that strategic agenda. They may have some areas that they are particularly interested in or concerned about, so that will be given higher priority in the process. And then my financial officer then presents the kind of reality first look at what do we think the revenue situation is going to be for the following year's budget. We do that in November, we do that again in March, we do that again in June, and we do that again in July. So we have about 4 different opportunities where we continue to get more and more fine-tuned as to trustees, what are you willing to live with? What do we think we need to have? And what might the revenues really be? And of course, as we start this in November, we have no idea what the local tax rates are going to be. So we don't know what that revenue is going to be. We don't know what the legislature may do if we're facing a legislative session, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a process of starting big at the 50,000-foot level, helping with the board to focus where we really want to put our emphasis, and then getting more and more refined as we get closer to the July date where the board adopts the budget.
Okay. Pardon me. I think I agree with my colleagues, and I think to put it very simply, that your educational planning, whether you call it a master plan or strategic plan or whatever it may be, that has to precede your budget process. You've got to determine where you're going and why you want to go there before you start talking about the money. And then you have to have reality set in as to what you can afford, what you can't afford, because sometimes the plans and the dreams are bigger than this year's budget, and you have to think about those in multiple years. And the second thing I would tell you is that not every school is exactly as precise, and you know, we're going to do this in this month or this in that month. Every school has a little different take on it. For example, we saw Ben a while ago talking about Austin Community College say they're going to consider tuition and fees in May. Personally, I think that's a little too late. If you're going to be setting tuition and fees, you need to be thinking several months before that if that's going to impact a summer or fall term. Waiting till May to set that for the next fall or next spring, to me, is a little too late to be thinking about that. You need to be thinking 6 months, a year in advance and projecting those things out. So different institutions are going to have different timetables for their budgets. But one of the things that, and Dr. Leslie, I think, expressed this very well, is that at some point in time, no matter whether it's part of an evaluation process or whether it's part of a workshop or where it happens, the board needs to tell the president what their budget priorities are and what their priorities are for the institution as part of the planning process, as part of the budget process. Because the president needs instructions. He needs guidance, or she needs guidance from the board. So I think that's very critical.
I'm going to skip down to question number 7 because we've got about 11 minutes left, and I don't think we're going to get through all the questions, but I think one that is important is what financial issues, board members, we know we all should look at everything every month, but perhaps everybody doesn't sometimes. And what are the financial issues that a board member should absolutely review on a month-to-month basis and always be aware of? Whoever.
Well, Miles, why don't you start?
Okay, I'll start. What we provide our board members on a month-to-month basis in their board package, which comes out for a regular board meeting, is a very high level, not 50,000 feet, but more like about 10,000 feet. It has budget summaries. It has, for each of our departments, it has year-to-date information, both for revenue and expenses, across different funds, okay? Because not only do you have your operating fund or education general fund, auxiliary fund, bond funds, if you have capital funds, and capital funds may be different from a project fund in terms of a project that may be going over multiple years. And so we try to do that by fund and provide them that information at a fairly high level. But what we also do is we put the detailed information, everything from cash disbursements, accounts payable journals, on our intranet at the college, where they have access to the details if they want to drill down to individual departments, individual expenditures, where they can look at that. And that's available to them on a month-to-month basis, along with information regarding the investments that the college has made with the excess revenues fund balance that we have. And it's important that board members look at that every month so they understand not only the big picture of what's happening, but at any individual department that they want to examine.
Okay. Anybody else?
You know, again, this kind of goes back to what I said, those three principles that I elaborated earlier. The key thing, of course, is for the board members to have the information they need, but most of the needs that the board has are at the macro level. You know, what are the trends? Where are we at this point of time in the year in terms of our ebb and flow of funding? Are there any areas where we could be in a difficult situation eventually? Do we see any trends? Are we overexpending in certain areas? How do we manage that? Rather than engaging with the trustees at that detail level. I learned a long time ago that trustees can often spend a lot of time at a board meeting debating whether we should be buying hair dryers for the gym and overlook a much more expensive decision and just simply pass that. And I've never understood that, but it happens a lot. So part of my objective has been to try to avoid that kind of thing and give them the kind of information that helps them really see the trends and the patterns, and to point out and give them heads up where we think that there may be an issue. Of course, we have an internal audit process which reports directly to the board. That's a little bit different. Sarbanes-Oxley doesn't require that for higher ed, but my board made that decision some years ago, frankly, partly because of what had happened at the Alamo board. So there's a dotted line from me to her, but that gives a lot of information to the board also. That's unfiltered through me. About what may be happening, where there may be areas of risk, et cetera. We have a risk management component as well. We report back to the board regularly on those kinds of issues so that we're able to point out to them where there may be areas where we need to make investments that may have not been planned earlier in the year, or whether enrollments are different than what we had projected, and of course I'll report that as soon as we know what those numbers are. So it's a very dynamic process of constantly giving them information. And things happen. You know, there's new interpretations, perhaps, of rules that may be going on. And so I try to let the board know as soon as I hear something, so that even if it may end up not being true, at least they've been forewarned on that. I also send the board a weekly report every Friday that both gives them an overview of the high points of what's happened at the colleges and the district over the week, you know, kind of the PR stuff. But also, if there's something I want them to be heads up on before they get to the cocktail circuit and hear something that might surprise them. If there's something that is of an immediate emergency, I will immediately communicate that to them. Usually I'll start with the chair and then go through the rest of the trustees. We do give, we have an annual calendar, so every month is laid out what are the monthly reports that we will give in January or in June, whatever, so they know that a report, full report on all of the grants will come in this month, and a full report on the debt service will happen on this month. So we do drill down in certain areas so that we can make sure that they have the big picture about those particular areas.
Well, I'm fortunate enough to have 2 CPAs on my board. And you may think that would require a lot of detail, but the board itself worked with me on the reports that we give them. And they are at a high level. And what they really want to know is what is the position of the institution financially at that point in time, as compared to what, number one, we have budgeted, what we have said we would be doing, and where we really are. And if there are any potential landmines out there that are going to occur, like state funding being reduced. So we're going to report those to them in a one-page document every month. At the same time, at any point in time that they want to see detail, it's available for them to look at. But at this point, that's not their desire to get into that area of operations. Now, not on a monthly basis, but on a quarterly basis, we also inform them of any budget changes that have occurred within the budget that they have approved. If it's something that is going to add to revenue or to change the bottom line, then they see that as it occurs and it's approved by them on a monthly basis. And of course, we all are required to give investment reports on a quarterly basis as well, and to let the board know where we are on investments, what we're investing in, and the return on those investments. So those are the things that we do on a continuous basis. But anytime there's a situation that comes up that the board needs to know about, I do the same thing as my colleagues do. And we call, inform them, email them, whatever we need to do so that they're out there and understand what's going on, and they can relay that to the community. If there's a disaster, and I have to act quickly to replace something. If there's a hurricane, Miles and I know what that means. And so all of those things can affect the bottom line. And those are the things that I think as board members you need to be informed of very quickly. And if we're not making our tuition revenue, if our enrollment has dropped, then we need to make those adjustments, and we need to make them quickly. We can't wait until the end of the year, and so those are critical for board members. So those are just some things I think we all do, but maybe a little bit differently based upon what our board has said that they would like to see.
We've got about 3 minutes left, and Gary, I know, has a microphone somewhere, right, that you can, oh, it's right here. If any, oh, Mary has it. Does anybody have a question, a burning question before we wrap up here? Okay. Oh, okay, there's one over here.
That question is for you. I believe you said that you, with your new board, or you conduct the training before every meeting with your board?
I do. I try to do that prior to every board meeting, and it's usually the chair and I work on the topic to discuss, but I've had one on open meetings, the open...
Is that done during the meeting that is open to the public, or do you list that as a as a special meeting, or how do you do that?
We do it as a special meeting. It is open to the public if they desire, and we post it just like we do any other posting.
But it's not part of the regular meeting of the
No,
board?
we have found that it works better to do that as a separate meeting.
Okay, and so that, but you still record it and as you would the regular meeting? Or?
Yes, we do, and we have minutes of that meeting just as we do for all the meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Again, we're just about out of time. Is there any last comment each one of you would like to make, or all three of you?
I'll make one last comment, because there's a kind of a question we didn't really get to in terms of long-term financial planning for the college. And Galveston College is not unique, but we do have a situation that those of us who are on the coast share, and Betty made reference to it. And that is, in our financial planning, we do have to take into consideration that it's not a question of if, it's just when is it going to happen. We will experience a hurricane. And so we have to think through much more diligently facilities and how we're prepared to manage that crisis, not only from the crisis standpoint itself, but from the financial implications that a hurricane brings. Because in our case, last hurricane not only caused physical damage to the campus, but we lost 30% of our enrollment overnight. Our business and our tax base was damaged. And so there's a whole, okay.
Keep going. I was just trying to keep us on track, so go ahead.
Her alarm went off. But there's a whole series of things that you have to think through in terms of disaster planning that have financial implications on the institution as well. So as you think through your budgets and your long-term plans, don't forget the issue of potential disasters. If you live in North Texas or West Texas, Panhandle, it might be a tornado. On the coast, it's going to be a hurricane. In certain areas, it might be a flood. But sometimes, sooner or later, it could happen to you.
Yes.
I might just add to that, we try to maintain at least 4 months of salaries in a separate fund, and we hold that because of such an instance that could occur. Not only that, but there could always be an issue where the state of Texas did not have the funding and deferred the funding to us. So we take those things into account as well, and I'm sure all of my colleagues are aware of that concern, and that's just good practice financially to hold money, even though sometimes your taxpayers want to know why you're holding money and still taxing them. But
yeah, if I could add, I'll just kind of pick up on the risk management area and compliance. There are lots of compliance regulations that we have to abide by, and one of your stewardship responsibilities is to ensure that the college is in fact abiding by those compliance requirements. And also, from time to time, we may end up being sued by a student or an employee because of some alleged issue. Could be a perception of discrimination over accessibility. It could be fear over some environmental issue that they perceive is going on. And so you always have to be ready to investigate those issues, properly file the reports, and ensure that you know whether or not those issues are real and how to address them. And of course, the best way to do that is being fully compliant up front, so that when you know if somebody says, we think that this college was built on an old dump and therefore more people are getting sick because of that, that you already know that that's not true. It was never built on a dump, and there in fact is no greater risk of illness because of that. But you get those things all the time. And so, my strategy again has always been to make sure that I have a risk management operation in place and that we're abiding by those responsibilities and ensuring that, the lab chemicals are properly disposed of, or that biological chemicals are being properly disposed of, or whatever the issue may be. So that's just another area to be mindful of.
thank all three of you for all your good, frank comments. And I just want to close with this comment. You know, the reason community colleges exist is to educate students, at whatever age they are, whether they're coming back from the workforce, they're young, they've dropped out, whatever the case may be. I think we all ran for the boards, hopefully because we cared about that and wanted to see that happen. A book that if you hadn't read, I would recommend that you get is by Peter Ewell, and it's called Making the Grade, How Boards Can Ensure Academic Quality. And one of the quotes in that book that I think is really important, it says, ensuring academic quality is a fiduciary responsibility. It's as much a part of our role as board members as ensuring that the institution has sufficient resources and is spending them wisely. So in all this conversation about campus financial management, all these things we're talking about making sure that they happen are so that we can work to make sure our students have success. And I know it's been discussed. We all know that outcomes-based funding is coming in this next legislative session, and lots of changings are occurring, and they go with all these things that have been discussed up here, the hard decisions that are going to have to be made, the reasons that trustees have got to back their presidents as they make those decisions. But I would just say this, don't forget, as you're thinking about all this campus financial management, the whole reason we're doing it is for the students, and it's all about student success. So thank each one of you for serving as trustees, and thank all of you for serving on this panel, and please give this illustrious panel a round of applause.